January 7th, 1970. It was a place called Imjarvi in Finland. Two skiing men have a close encounter that will change their lives forever. Was that an UFO? Can we even believe that story? I think we should discuss this. Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, hi, welcome. We are discussing here UFOs, mysteries, true crimes and many other interesting things, so subscribe if you would love to, no pressure. If you are not new here, welcome again. I'm very happy that you are returning on my videos. So if you remember the story of Mr. Carlson, the Pollenskungen, the Swedish millionaire who had a close encounter in Sweden, if you haven't seen that, I'm gonna link it below at the description. But you know, this story kind of reminds me of that because it's also a close encounter just happening in Finland. It was Wednesday, January the 7th, 1970. This happened in a small village of Imjarvi, which was around 16 kilometers northeast of the city of Heinola in southern Finland. The main characters of today's story are 26-year-old forest worker Arno Heinonen and the second was 38-year-old farmer Esko Viljo. Both of the men were very athletic, and I think that's a common trait for almost all the Scandinavians. Most of them are very into sports and being active, especially outdoors. So both of these guys were out there in the woods doing their usual skiing routine. And that was the area that was very well known by both of them. It was already twilight, the weather was calm, there was no wind, and there were some clouds in the sky. Both men did the usual slope that would lead them to a piece of land that was like clear from wood or bushes. Usually they would take their little break after skiing in that place. So they stopped there and everything seemed calm until a humming sound disturbed their peace. When they looked up, because the sound was coming from above, they saw something like a flash and they described it as a luminous cloud that was moving from north slowly towards the ground. The noise got louder and at a certain level this thing stopped, and then the men could see that this cloud, as they described, was actually rotating. They said that the color of it was strange, like a reddish gray, and it also was pulsating with a strange light. Now, people have different reactions towards stress and shock. Some get panicky, some simply froze. Like, I think I would be the panicky type because I would scream and I don't know, like that, the things would get messy over there. Although I would be curious also, so I don't know. So these guys, these are the ones that actually freeze from the shock. So they just stand there and continue watching what's happening. Now they concentrate more, and what they see is that in that cloud, there is actually a round, metallic and shiny object around 3 meters of diameter. And they are actually looking to it from down there on the ground, and they're seeing the bottom of it. According to Arno and Esko, just reminding their names because I'm gonna mention them a lot during the video. So they said that they noticed that on the bottom there was also like a tube, was like coming from the middle of this button. For a while this object was hovering over the men, and then it suddenly started to move towards them. The buzzing sound increased and the mist that was surrounding it was slowly dissolving. It stopped around 3 meters above this man. The hissing and buzzing stopped and everything went silent, and also this thing stopped over them. So at one point, remember the tube that I described that was on the bottom of this vehicle? Yeah, it shed out a light on the land and made a circle in the snow. And this circle was around 1 meter in a diameter and it had like a dark border. So both of these men, they were just standing there and watching what's happening. I mean, they have some gut, because I would be screaming at this point. After a few seconds, the light contracted and rose upwards to about half a meter above the ground. When the light went out, they saw a disc about 6 inches in diameter. The disc first stood still, then it made a little move while a ticking sound was heard. Then it quickly disappeared into the tube of the craft. Then one of the men, whose whose name was Arno, said that suddenly he felt like some kind of power pulling him back. With this power, he kind of stepped backwards a little bit, and when he got himself back, what he saw in front of him was some kind of creature. It stood in the middle of the cone of light with a black box in his hands. A yellow light pulsated from a round opening in the box. He was about 90 centimeters tall and very thin with slender arms and legs. The face was pale. He did not notice any eyes, but the nose was very strange. According to Arno, this creature's ears were positioned very close to the head, so they were not like protruding out. And also he said that he was wearing a very tight overall that was in a pale green color. Also, he had some knee-high boots and gloves that were up to the elbows. He described his hands as looking like a claw. So he was holding this box and it looked like it was in claws, like, I don't know, creepy. Arno's friend Esko, remember there was another man, supported this, also stating that he saw this man, and he said, "I saw it too. The creature stood in the midst of the bright light, shining as if it had been made of phosphorus. The face was very pale and the shoulders were very thin and sloping, the arms slender. I didn't think about the clothing, I just saw that it was greenish. On his head sat a peaked helmet that shone like metal. The creature was no more than a meter long and very thin." But the men continued to stand there in a shock. So they are standing there, and at one point this creature like moves towards a little bit to Arno with this box and starts to point this box towards Arno. Light that is coming out of this box is like literally so bright that it's almost blinding. While this creature was standing there in this light circle that was created by this vehicle, a reddish gray mist was rising up from it, and also it was like throwing out somewhat like sparkles in different colors like gray, red, violet, and they were kind of jumping out of the circle towards the snow that is outside the circle. These colorful sparks were actually jumping as far as to the point where both of the men were standing, so they touched them, although they said that they didn't harm them at that point. And the mist that was slowly moving upwards got thicker and thicker up to the point that both of the men couldn't see each other, and also at one point they didn't even see the creature anymore. Esko said, "Suddenly the cone of light on the ground melted together, floated upwards like a flickering flame, and was sucked into the craft's opening. Then it was as if the curtain of fog was torn apart, and above us the air was empty." Arno recalls that after this craft and this creature disappeared, just like that in the mist above them, they were standing there on the spot for like a couple of minutes in silence because they were in shock. But when they got themselves back together, they started to feel a little bit weird, especially Arno, because he noticed that his right side of the body suddenly has gotten numb. Arno tried to move his feet. Remember, they were also on skis, but once he tried to do that, he just simply collapsed because his right leg was not working anymore. And he, at that moment, remembered that his right side was the side that was closest to the ring and to the sparkles that were like jumping out, and also that thing pointed this box towards him with the bright light. Of course, Arno didn't give up. He tried again and again to move his right leg, but without any results. Of course, also his friend Esko was there, and he didn't leave his friend just like that, laying there in the snow. He took off his skis and helped him, like dragged or carried him back home. It was weird why he decided to bring him back home if he was in such a bad condition. But anyways, that's what they did. It took them for about 2 hours to walk a 2-kilometer distance to Arno's cabin. When they got there, Arno started to complain that he also has some severe back pain and also pain in his joints. And also he got some serious headaches. And after a while, he also started to vomit. In fact, sources say that this vomiting continued for months after this encounter. And what is also interesting that for the first time when he went to the bathroom after this encounter, he also allegedly had black urine, and also this continued for like a week after this encounter. And also Arno complained that he had some difficulties with breathing. At around 8 p.m. when Arno understood that things are really serious, he called his neighbor and asked to help him to take him to the closest hospital in the Heinola city. There he was examined by a doctor, Pauli Kajanoja, and the man told about all of his symptoms. He was vomiting, that he had pain in the back and everything. So the doctor took his blood pressure and it was very much below the normal, which according to the doctor indicated that he was in a severe shock. Now this is a little bit weird, but I'm not judging, I'm not a doctor. What the doctor decides is the doctor prescribes him sleeping pills. I think the doctor's opinion was that maybe he was in some severe stress or shock situation and he just needs to have a good rest and have a good sleep. So Arno ends up going home with sleeping pills. When Arno wakes up, of course, all of the symptoms are still there. So he goes back to the doctor and says, I still have all of the stuff that I had yesterday. But what the doctors tell him is that please don't worry, all of the symptoms are going away in around like 10 days, so just take it easy, don't stress. At that point, he was prescribed sedatives, so he went back home, but still the joints ached, the headache didn't stop, he was still vomiting. Also, he said that he felt like he was freezing, although he didn't have any fever, and also he had some balance difficulties. On January the 17th, he again visited the doctors and said that nothing has stopped, it still continues, and the doctor prescribed him some kind of medicine for the blood circulation since his leg was going numb, I guess, and he was feeling like he was freezing. All of this continued still, regardless the medicine, and he wasn't even able to work. And I think at this point it was like enough is enough, and he wrote an official letter in the mid-May of 1970s to an organization that's called UFO organization GICOF. So what is that organization? It's a Gothenburg Information Center for Unidentified Flying Objects. It was an organization that is based in Gothenburg, which during the years of 1970s up to 1978 published the magazine of GICOF information. The purpose of this organization and this magazine was to look into all of the reports of UFOs coming in from the scientific perspective and publish all of that in the magazine, regardless whether the result was that that thing might be a UFO or this thing was scientifically proven not to be a UFO. In the letter, Arno describes all of his symptoms. He complains that it is really hard for him to do anything in his life after this encounter, and he also said that I've applied for sickness benefits but I don't get any. I think they should pay because I don't know why I got sick. I have been to the place where the phenomenon occurred. After this I became even sicker. In addition to that, Arno also noticed that he had some memory loss moments, like he completely blacked out and didn't remember parts of his life. This is a case of a man who was like physically and mentally strong, who was doing a lot of exercise and didn't have any problems in his life, and after this encounter he was so weak, he was all in pain, he didn't even want to eat, and his health was like severely deteriorating. Now, how about the other guy? Remember, there was also Escovillo with him. So the first hour after this encounter he felt okay, but after that some things also started to happen with him. So according to him, his face swelled and it also got red. And people afterwards also noticed that he was also having some balance problems because he was walking kind of unevenly. So this is also kind of similar to Arno because he also had some balance problems. The same doctor who treated Arno treated also Escovillo when he finally came to the doctor with his symptoms. And guess what? He was also prescribed sleeping pills. I don't know what to say about that. What's with those sleeping pills? Anyways, Esko goes home, he takes the sleeping pills, he sleeps, wakes up, nothing has changed. And in addition, not only he has like effed up balance and his face is red, now all of the upper body is red. So he goes back to the doctor and says, nothing has changed, please help me. And at this point, the doctor starts to claim and assume that both of these guys might have suffered an electrical explosion. What the fuck, in the middle of woods? Is it possible? Is it like, is she referring to some kind of, again, ball lightning or something? I don't know, but that's what the doctor starts to assume. A little bit later, Esko goes to an eye doctor because he felt like his eyes were super sensitive to a bright light. So the doctor checks the eyes, gives him some eye drops. He starts to use them, but these eye drops didn't really help. His eyes, actually his eyelids were like really swollen, even to that extent it was damaged. And after a while, he again goes back to the doctor and doctor prescribes some medicine for blood circulation. We're again back to the same treatment as Arno received. So again, blood circulation, and they take some blood tests and the blood tests show that everything is normal. Esko also wrote to this Gita organization with describing how he felt in that encounter situation and what happened with him afterwards. There he mentions that he actually has some nerve and blood circulation problems in his left leg. And whenever he goes to sauna, before you say why the heck he's going to sauna, it's Finland. Finns love sauna. It's like part of their lives. So whenever he went to sauna, his skin became super red and he had this really painful tangling feeling on the skin. The doctor came forward with its own like statement where it said, I think they had received a real shock. Viljo's face was very red and seemed a little swollen. Both seemed absent at the same time. They talked eagerly, a little incoherently. In the case of a strong shock, the blood pressure dropped significantly, which it did in this case. I couldn't find anything clinically wrong with Heinonen, but it may have been due to his stomach reacting when he was startled. The symptoms he described were very similar to those you get from a radioactive radiation. Unfortunately, I didn't have a radiation meter handy. However, the damage from radioactive radiation can rarely be detected after a few hours. The colored urine seems unexplained. It could possibly be the blood in the urine. It was impossible to make a definite diagnosis and therefore I could not prescribe any special medicine. What is more, some people also started to report that they had seen something weird on the same night when both of the men had their encounter. So, farmer's wife Enna Siitari, in a village about 15 kilometers away from the Imjarvi where this encounter took place, said that she saw some strange light beyond Imjarvi from her barn. In Paso village, which is around a mile away from the place where this thing happened, a boy went out to get some firewood for this house and he also reported seeing some kind of light phenomena in the sky. And as it appears, also something strange happened a year before this encounter took place. It was year 1969 and a 16-year-old Matti Kontulainen from Imjarvi saw something strange. I guess it was a light or something a little bit close or nearby the area where both of these men had their encounter. I came skiing through the forest after visiting a friend. It was quite dark, but suddenly the forest was lit up by a very bright light that moved close above the treetops, so low that I threw myself into the snow. It was like a giant welding flame, and it was gone in a few moments. I have never before or since seen such a bright light. It was like looking into the sun. It came from the south and went to the north. I didn't hear a slightest sound, so I'm sure it wasn't an airplane. Farmer Matti Haapaniemi, who was Arno Heinonen's closest neighbor and also he was a member of the city council of Heinola, said that he believes both of the guys because he had known them since they were boys and he thinks that they are speaking the truth, they're not lying, and people of course laughed at them for coming out and saying like, yeah, we saw an UFO, but he said that he believes them and so does the other people should believe them. Now, what we can take out of this, is this really something extraterrestrial? Well, first I have to point out that many descriptions of extraterrestrial encounters sound quite similar to that one that was described by Arno and Esko. So for example, let's just take the oldie, the already mentioned Mr. Carlson's Pollenskungens encounter in Sweden in the 40s. Like, he also said that these creatures were wearing similar clothes, like very tight overalls, just the color was different. He also mentioned some kind of box. Carlson said that it looked like some kind of camera. These guys described it as a box that had a light inside, so there's also that. The only difference is that Carlson's creatures looked like humans, but these Finnish guys described them as being like 1 meter high with some abnormal facial features and also with claws, and they look completely different than humans. Can we find something like scientific that would kind of discard this ET option? Well, there was a professor of electrophysics at the University of Helsingfors, and he looked into this case and he concluded that it is not excluded that Heinonen's and Viljo's injuries were caused by electrical radiation. Both say the light was blinding and white, and then it could not have been ultraviolet radiation, which is always bluish. It also does not penetrate clothes. If the radiation really did pass through Heinonen's clothes, it must have been even more shortwave radiation, such as X-rays. Now, that's the explanation of a person who understands things about electrophysics. He also doesn't have like a normal explanation for that. The newspapers also started to push forward the option of the fact being an electrical discharge in the atmosphere. So the Gita, the organization that was trying to figure out what was that, they wrote to Uppsala University, to an institute for high voltage research, and received the following reply. As far as we can judge, the phenomenon has no connection to thunder or air electricity of any known kind. At Chalmers University of Technology, the Department of Nuclear Chemistry, they analyzed soil samples from that area to determine if there is like any radioactivity present in the soil, and the results came back as there's none. There's no radioactivity in the soil. The thing is that so many years have passed since 1970, and we still don't know what actually happened on that place with both of these men. And what is more, both Arno and Esko are not even alive anymore. I tried to find out how both of these men died, but I couldn't find any sources. So I guess their death, if they were in such a pain and having all of these symptoms, was not very peaceful one, I suppose, but I don't know any like detailed information about that. I just know that they're not alive anymore. So what was during the research when the Gikov was involved into this research? So they exchanged a lot of letters with Arno and Esko, and all of these letters they received in Finnish. They were translated into Swedish because this organization is a Swedish organization. And also some journalists went down to Finland, to Imjarvi, to that place to investigate the spot, and they went there together with Arno and Esko, and they photographed the place. They also took some interviews, and what they remember from that is that there was some kind of weird energy, and whenever Esko and Arno went there, they both started to have like severe headaches, especially Arno, and he even had to go away because he couldn't bear the headache over there. And all of the materials, both the letters and also the photographs, are at the disposal of the Gikov organization archive now. Of course, let's look at this more critically. Can we believe to the story that both of these men told? In terms of credibility, I mean, there is a high possibility that this could have happened, although, of course, this wouldn't be me if I didn't look from it from the other side. So according to the sources, Arno also started to speak up about other encounters after this one. So it happened in 1972 when he came forward with statements that he had met a lot of other aliens too. And he described that like once it was a woman and then there was that, and like it became very weird. So we don't know what was that actually. Was he seeking for an attention? If that was the case, then maybe also the first encounter was just a story to have an attention, or maybe he was just a little bit going already crazy, like mentally ill, from the fact that he was in such a pain, and also from the fact that nobody really believed him. Then, of course, people speculated that they just wanted to come out with the story, become famous and rich. In their opinion, both of these men sat down by the table, decided, well, let's just make up the story, become famous and get rich. I don't know actually, because this wasn't the case. They didn't become famous and they didn't become rich. They didn't have any financial benefit from all of this thing. What they got was only just they were laughed at. Nobody believed them. And as you remember, Arno even wrote to Gikov saying that he cannot get even health benefits because he doesn't have a diagnosis. Also, I read some sources that actually the statements that both of these men gave after this first encounter started to differ a little bit when they started to give interviews afterwards. That was later after this encounter. So, for example, Arno allegedly said that he saw this creature having a box, but Esko didn't mention that box in his first statement. He adds that only a little bit later. So then there was also this thing that in the first statement, one of the men said that this creature looked like very tiny, slim, narrow shoulders, but the other said that it was like a broad-shouldered, quite a large creature. And only later they both kind of started to push forward this theory of a narrow-shouldered, tiny, skinny creature. And if we're really critical about that, apart from the fact that the guys told to everyone and the fact that their health was damaged, there was no other real proof. It was just their stories. And even like all the scientists who were a little bit involved in this, like the soil samples and looking into possibilities of that being related to electrophysics and stuff, there was nothing. About the other sightings from other people around, I mean, it's not a secret that if you come forward with saying that I saw an alien, then other people's kind of jump on the same train and start to think, oh, I saw a shooting star on that day. Maybe that was an alien, if you know what I mean, where I'm going with that. Anyways, I just want to know what you are thinking about the story. Have you heard about that? What would be your explanations of what happened really there in Imjarvi with both of these men, and did they really see an UFO? Also, just to mention, I still have this email. I haven't received any of your stories or photos or videos with your encounters or mysterious stories. If you don't want to do that, just tell me. But now my inbox is empty, so I'm just waiting for your stories, this email. That being said, I hope you have a lovely day. Stay curious, sometimes check the sky, and if you see something there, send me on my email. See you next time.